Breaking news from the Republic of Letters. Samuel Johnson, essayist, moralist, conversational tyrant, tea enthusiast, and compiler of the great Dictionary of the English Language, has apparently resumed work. This has surprised scholars, biographers, and several parish authorities, because Johnson has been dead since 1784. But death, it seems, was only a publishing delay. Johnson's dictionary, first published in 1755, was not the first English dictionary. That honour belongs to earlier and less entertaining labours. But Johnson's was the first great one. Vast, learned, opinionated, funny, prejudiced, brilliant, and human. It was produced with astonishing effort, largely by one man, in an age before search engines, autocomplete, cloud storage, or the soothing modern phrase, "Let me circle back on that." Johnson defined words, yes, but he also defined civilization's ridiculousness. He could not resist smuggling judgment into lexicography. His famous definition of oats, for instance, was not merely botanical, it was national insult by way of breakfast. So perhaps we should not be surprised that Johnson, observing our age from whatever smoky chamber of eternity currently contains him, has taken up the pen again. The world has changed. The follies have not. Modern man has acquired new machines, new vanities, new methods of making himself miserable, and a vocabulary designed to make surrender sound like progress. Johnson, being Johnson, has noticed. We now go to the recovered manuscript, supplement to the Dictionary of the English Language, compiled in the afterlife by Samuel Johnson, LL.D., reluctantly updated for the present century. Algorithm. A contrivance by which no man is compelled to choose what he likes, because a machine, having observed his weakness, supplies him with more of it. Influencer. One who, being possessed of neither office, craft, nor wisdom, acquires authority by being looked at frequently. Content. Any substance, however thin, poured continually into the public mind, so that it may never stiffen into thought. Platform. A stage upon which every man may speak, provided he first consents to be measured, sorted, provoked, and sold. Engagement. The commerce of agitation, a proof that the public has been successfully irritated. Outrage. A fever of the moral faculties, often contracted voluntarily, and seldom cured by facts. Discourse. A word by which quarrels are elevated into scholarship, and gossip is permitted to wear a gown. Authenticity. The laborious performance of being natural. Brand. The soul, after it has been prepared for market. Personal brand. A reputation one constructs in the hope of someday becoming indistinguishable from an advertisement. Wellness. The modern art of converting anxiety into purchases. Self-care. An indulgence renamed by the anxious, lest pleasure appear insufficiently therapeutic. Productivity. The worship of motion by those afraid to ask where they are going. Multitasking. The performance of several duties so poorly that each may accuse the others. Work-life balance. A phrase used by employers to suggest that exhaustion has been considered in principle. Remote work. A condition in which the labourer, having escaped the office, discovers that the office has followed him home and learned his private hours. Email. A system by which a man receives, at every hour, written evidence that other people have failed to think. Meeting. A gathering in which minutes are kept and hours are lost. Quick call. A meeting in ambush. Circling back. Returning to a subject because no one possessed courage enough to finish it the first time. Leadership. The art of speaking confidently about work performed by others. Thought leader. A person who has mistaken frequent posting for reflection. Innovation. The renaming of an old inconvenience by a young department. Disruption. The breaking of something useful by men who have already sold their shares. Startup. A company temporarily relieved from the burden of profit by the enthusiasm of strangers. Pivot. A confession of failure delivered in the vocabulary of agility. Scalable. Said of any scheme capable of disappointing multitudes instead of individuals. App. A small engine for converting impatience into dependency. Smartphone. A pocket oracle, consulted chiefly by those who have lost the habit of wondering. Notification. A bell rung by commerce in the chapel of attention. Feed. A trough from which the mind eats without hunger. Scrolling. A pilgrimage without shrine, progress, or arrival. Trending. Briefly mad in company. Viral. A compliment borrowed from disease. Meme. A jest that survives by surrendering its author. Podcast. A conversation made public in the hope that interruption has become obsolete. Creator. A maker, often compelled by the market to become his own town crier, accountant, apologist, and dancing bear. Subscriber. A patron who is thanked monthly by automatic machinery. Community. A word once denoting mutual obligation, now frequently applied to people who clicked the same button. Friend. In former times, one attached by affection. In modern use, an index entry with a face. Follower. A person who lends his attention without promising his belief. Like. The smallest coin in the economy of approval. Share. To distribute a thought before examining whether it contains one. Comment section. The cellar of public speech. Fact check. A procedure by which truth arrives after the lie has completed its journey, raised children, and purchased real estate. Conspiracy theory. A romance for the suspicious, in which all events are connected except the evidence. Research. In common modern usage, the act of finding a stranger online who agrees with one's first impression. My truth. An opinion seeking immunity from examination. Lived experience. A necessary testimony when joined to thought, a dangerous tyrant when used to banish it. Privilege. An advantage most easily detected in others and most reluctantly inventoried at home. Empathy. A virtue much praised in public and seldom practiced when inconvenient. Trauma. A grave human wound. Also, in careless mouths, a term by which discomfort seeks promotion. Toxic. A word applied to any person, duty, opinion, or vegetable that resists our appetite. Boundaries. Wise limits when used to preserve the soul. Fashionable barricades when used to avoid all obligation. Problematic. A term of censure by which the speaker announces that judgment has occurred, though argument has been delayed indefinitely. Nuance. A quality much demanded from enemies and rarely extended to them. Conversation. A thing everyone wishes to start and no one wishes to lose. Debate. An exchange in which each party listens chiefly for reload instructions. Civility. The minimum polish by which contempt may enter respectable rooms. Expert. A person summoned when he agrees with us and unmasked when he does not. Education. The slow formation of judgment, now sometimes confused with the rapid accumulation of credentials. Credential. A document proving that one has been processed by an institution. University. A place where youth is instructed in freedom by persons unable to escape committee work. Adjunct. A scholar paid by the course and consoled with the language of vocation. Student debt. A mortgage on the mind, taken out before the tenant has inspected the premises. Career. A pilgrimage from ambition to fatigue, interrupted by passwords. Success. The state of being envied by people who do not know the cost. Hustle. A poor man's desperation when praised by a rich man. Side hustle. A second occupation undertaken because the first has failed in the ancient duty of feeding the worker. Gig economy. A system in which insecurity is made flexible. Freedom. In commercial language, the privilege of bearing risk that formerly belonged to one's employer. Convenience. The pleasure of saving time by entering into arrangements that consume the rest of one's life. Subscription. A small leak in the purse, made respectable by recurrence. Luxury. A necessity after it has been photographed. Minimalism. The art of owning little, preferably at great expense. Sustainability. A virtue often printed on the package of the thing that disproves it. Eco-friendly. Harmless in intention, ambiguous in evidence, excellent in typography. Artificial intelligence. A machine trained upon the works of men, then admired for producing sentences from which men have been removed. Prompt. An instruction given to a machine by a man who hopes to outsource the consequences of his own vagueness. Generated. Made without having been suffered. Human touch. A phrase used when the machine has done most of the work and the man has corrected the punctuation. Creative. Formerly one who made something. Now, sometimes, one who selects from the outputs of a machine and calls the fatigue curatorial. Originality. The art of stealing from the dead, preferably with gratitude, transformation, and better manners. Vibe. An atmosphere invoked when thought has not yet arrived. Aesthetic. Taste after it has been flattened for display. Curated. Selected, arranged, and made more expensive. Experience. Something formerly lived through, now sold in timed slots. Journey. Any process, however trivial, once it has become useful for self-advertisement. Closure. A finality requested from life, which life, having no customer service department, declines to provide. Adulting. The discovery that ordinary duty sounds less humiliating when disguised as a novelty. Resilience. A noble strength in persons, a suspicious demand when issued by institutions. Transparency. The promise that all shall be revealed, except the matter under discussion. Accountability. A ceremony in which regret is expressed, lessons are invoked, and no advantage is returned. Apology. In its corrupted form, a statement of sorrow that the listener has misunderstood the speaker's excellence. Public relations. The art of cleaning a window while the house burns behind it. Breaking news. News that has broken loose from proportion. Update. A disturbance to a functioning thing, performed in the name of improvement. Upgrade. The exchange of a familiar inconvenience for an unfamiliar one. Terms of service. A document by which the citizen consents to what he has not read, could not alter, and will later regret. Privacy policy. A confession written in a language designed to prevent alarm. Data. The shadow cast by the person in the marketplace. User. A customer viewed with the tenderness of a miner toward coal. Free service. A bargain in which the price is concealed inside the purchaser. Optimized. Adjusted until the human purpose has become subordinate to the measurable one. Metrics. Numbers used to replace judgment, especially where judgment would be expensive. Best practice. The custom of the herd, recommended by those who have mistaken safety for wisdom. Life hack. A small fraud committed against one's own attention. Biohack. The hope that mortality may be outwitted by breakfast. Mindfulness. The practice of being present, often taught by means of an app that interrupts you. Retreat. A costly departure from the life one refuses to change. Networking. Friendship with a business card concealed in the sleeve. Collaboration. Labor made plural. Credit made singular. Passion. A word used to persuade the worker that wages are a vulgar subject. Dream job. Employment so advertised when the waking terms are poor. Opportunity. An unpaid demand wearing a bright hat. Exposure. Payment in imaginary sunlight. Monetize. To discover what part of one's life has not yet been rented out. Legacy. The reputation a man hopes will survive after those who knew him are no longer available for correction. The manuscript ends there, though several pages appear to have been torn out violently after Johnson encountered the phrase, personal growth webinar. Scholars remain divided on the authenticity of the document. Some argue that the definitions are too severe. Others point out that Johnson once defined a lexicographer as a harmless drudge, which suggests that severity was never exactly absent from the shop. What would Johnson make of us? He would probably admire our inventions, then condemn what we had allowed them to do to our attention. He would appreciate the abundance of books, then ask why we spend our lives reading fragments written by strangers in bad temper. He would be fascinated by artificial intelligence, then demand to know why men who possessed minds were so eager to be relieved of using them. Johnson understood something we are still trying to evade. Language is never merely language. The words we choose reveal the excuses we prefer. The fashionable phrase is often a moral disguise. The new vocabulary of an age tells you what that age is trying hardest not to see. When exploitation becomes opportunity, exhaustion becomes hustle, surveillance becomes personalization, and loneliness becomes engagement. The dictionary is no longer a book of words. It is an autopsy. And so, Dr. Johnson, still laboring somewhere beyond the veil, has performed one final service. He has reminded us that satire is not the enemy of seriousness. It is seriousness, with its wig slightly askew. And if his definitions sting, that may be because the language stung first. More updates as the afterlife permits.